Hi, I'm Venessa Giunta. I am an author and an editor and an all-around like to talk about things person and a little awkward sometimes. One of my favorite things to do is talk to authors, right? I love talking to authors about their process, their writing, their careers, their marketing, all those things. And I really love just sitting down and just talking about stuff. I mean, communication is my love language. So that's really what I had in mind. I really wanted a situation where I could just have a conversation with somebody. So, and a conversation and a cocktail is really all about us hanging out and drinking together and talking about the stuff. All right. Hello, everybody. It always cracks me up watching that beginning because so many of the clips I'm like laughing my ass off.
You're a happy person.
It cracks me up. Hi, y'all. Welcome, Bob McGough, the Redneck Wizard.
Woo!
We're so glad you could join us. So glad you could join us.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's always fun. You get us together, we are awful.
Shenanigans will ensue.
Yes, all the shenanigans. So I see some people are already out there. I see Anita and Faye and Rosie. Hello, friends. Hello, hello. All right. So it is conversation and a cocktail. So what are you drinking?
Benedictine and brandy.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Which was recommended to me by Ben Meeks. So we sometimes drink it on the podcast that we do, Books, Beards, Booze. So it's Bob and Ben drinking B&B on Books, Beards, and Booze. So
I feel like that's important. I feel like that's important to know. And Kofu is in the house. Thank you, Kofu, for the happy birthday. Thank you. And also happy birthday to Bob because his was what, like 3 days ago?
Close enough. Yeah, something like that. Fourth.
Yeah, a few days ago.
Star Wars Day.
Oh, the 4th. Okay, so it was like, yeah, about a week ago. I thought we were closer together, but that's okay. Is it chilly in that room, Bob?
Well, you know
he's drinking all that booze.
Chilly today, hot tamale.
Oh no.
Oh yes.
Drinking it straight from the bottle because that's how we roll. How we roll. So I am drinking. I haven't actually started drinking. So I just got back on Friday at 1 a.m. from a trip to the South Caribbean. I am not a beach girl. I did not get to choose the location, but it was a family trip. But of course, as is my wont when I'm at one of the Dutch islands, I went and toured a distillery because, I mean, have you met me? And so what I've got, this particular distillery makes liqueur, and some of the liqueur they make are from cacti. So this particular one has spices and things in it, and they make a different flavor that's a different color for each of the islands, depending on like what is big on their island. So I was at this distillery, you'll appreciate this, Bob, at 10 a.m.
Of course.
You
have to.
And they gave us a taste of everything, but it's called the Kandushi distillery, and they make liqueur, but they also make spirits. They make tequila, they make rum, they make a private stock rum that is excellent. I said tequila, gin, and what's the other one? Whiskey. They make a whiskey, and their whiskey is international award winning. So yeah. So anyway, I've got this, and I've got my rooibos tea that is cinnamon. So this one has cinnamon and cloves, and it's the Spices of Saba liqueur. So it's one of the islands. I haven't actually opened it yet. Spicy. Okay, I'm gonna put a little bit in my cup. Right. So look at that, half the bottle already. How about that? I should close it because you know me, I'm gonna knock that shit right over. All right, thank you for all the happy birthday wishes again to both of us. We're almost birthday twins at this point.
Yeah.
So my first question is always, what was your radioactive spider bite into the world of writing and publishing. Tell us your origin story, Bob.
Ooh, my origin story. I started writing in, we'll call it high school. Uh, my very first experience in trying to write a novel was I didn't even keep in mind backwoods Alabama, right? So I had never heard of fan fiction. I had no idea what that was. But essentially, I was writing uh, Warhammer fantasy dwarven fan fiction. I was going. That was the first book I tried to write, and it went exactly as terrible as all that sounds. Uh, and then I got to college, and I discovered D&D, and I quit writing. Um, what I've
Yeah.
what I've since figured out is D&D kind of consumed my creativity. Like I was still telling stories, I was just doing it in a different format.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 2012 when I was wrapping up grad school that I kind of rediscovered my love of writing. And I pretty early on, I signed a deal with a academic small press that was starting a steampunk fantasy imprint. And they had never done anything like that before. And obviously, I had never been published before. And
so this was a match made in heaven.
not a good experience. And so I got burned pretty badly there. Like, not like I didn't take a financial hit, and I've got the rights back to all that stuff. They were very like they realized is like this is not some ooh, we're keeping your money, rah, we're keeping your rights. They realized this was a
This
bad,
was not for them.
yeah, really good academic press, really bad fantasy press. And so
Yeah.
it's totally different. And they just didn't, I don't think they realized that going into it. So uh, at that point, I just started I realized I needed to finish a novel if I wanted to do this for a living. I was writing short stories, and I eventually realized it took a couple of years, but I eventually realized that man, you cannot make much money writing short stories, especially as a no-name author. And so I finished my first novel. It was a horror novel. I shopped it around. Uh, didn't get any nibbles. I mean, I got like requests for 10 pages from agents, but
Yeah.
no one ever signed me. And I think it was 2019 at Dragon Con, I did a mentor session with John Hartness, and I went to him. Yeah, I went to him. I was like, "Hey, I've got this. I got this horror novel that I'm shopping around. Not having much luck with it, but I think my best work is this series of novellas about a redneck wizard with a meth addiction." I was like, "Do you think I should try and get that traditionally published?" And he's like, "Oh God, no." He's like, "No, no, no, no."
Sorry, nobody's going to take that.
He's like, "Trad Publishing doesn't like novellas." Now I think the scene's a little different because of Murderbot and stuff like that. They're a little more receptive to novellas, but in 2019, no one was seriously publishing novellas. And he's like, and at face value, your protagonist is unlikable. But he's like, and what he said, and this has stuck with me. He was like, but I write Bubba the Monster Hunter, and I pay my mortgage. And at that point, I was like, man, I bet you having a mortgage would be nice. That'd be a cool place to be in life. And so when COVID hit and I was basically just bubbled up and sitting at home, couldn't do anything else, I was like, if I'm not going to start publishing now, if not now, when? And so that's when I started self-publishing. And now, coming full circle, that horror novel that I shopped around that had no luck, Falstaff Dread, will be publishing in August, we think. So
yes,
neat how it kind of all comes back together. So
yes, and I think that is a testament to connections that you make. Especially at cons, but really anywhere that writers are. You make connections. Find people find each other, and you help each other. That's how it works, right?
Oh yeah, Yeah, I mean, I got, because if you look, Falstaff is not open to submissions, and I just
Mm.
happened to be. It was at Multiverse, I guess 2 years ago. Um, I, I was just sitting in the bar with Hartness, and I was telling him about the horror novel I was writing at the time, and he's like, "Why have you never sent me something?" I was like, "Because you're not open to submissions." He's like, "Oh, well, ignore that. I know you can write. Send me something." So, oh well, okay. And so the novel I was actually telling him about was originally what I was going to send them, but that novel has now become a trilogy that's still not done. So
Pins.
you know,
They're growing babies.
they
They
are,
grow. That's
they
how it
are.
happens.
It got away from me. So luckily, I had my that first novel I had written, and I told him, I was like, "Look, this is my first novel. I absolutely understand if you're like, this is awful. Please, what have you done to us?" Um, but Rachel Brune was like, "Oh no, yeah, I like it. Let's run with it." So I was like, "Cool, thanks. I'm excited."
Yes,
So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Awesome. I love that. So I want to tell people in the audience, if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll hit them as we go. But I want you to tell us more about he told the same story about you at Jordan Con, so I know he is excited to have you on his press, Joe says.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
It's always good when your publisher is excited.
Yeah, well, that was. I feel I still like. I've talked to Joe about. I've talked to so many people about this. I just feel bad about Jordan Con because I was originally supposed to be there, and then I wasn't, and I
Well, we
just didn't feel.
appreciate you not bringing COVID. So,
Well, I got COVID. I, I would have been. Yeah, I was over it like a full probably like 5 days before I would have even left to go. Like I would have been
okay.
fine, but that no, it ended up. Um, I couldn't get vending space, and
Mm.
we went back and forth because I was already committed as a guest, and I told him that I was like, it's kind of expensive for me to do if I can't sell, and they asked me to please wait, and I did, and I waited about a month of them kind of going back and forth, and we could just never make it work, and I finally had to tell him, like, look, I've got another event that I'm now locked in on. And then a week later, Jordan Con was like, "Hey, we got you some space." I was like,
Yeah.
"I'm I'm
Too
locked
little, too
in."
late. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
and it
happens.
yeah, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's not a reflection on
Mhm.
them. Well, I mean, it is a
Right.
reflection on them at the demand that they have for vendor space.
Yeah.
It's a good
Yes.
reflection on them.
Yes.
But it was just, I feel bad about it, but you know, them's the break
Yeah, but
sometimes. So
I understand because if you're traveling, it's a much higher bar to cover your expenses,
yeah,
and especially if it's something that isn't necessarily just being on panels isn't necessarily going to get people buying your books, right? So, because I'm the same way with Con Carolinas, I've gone several times with only getting because I don't have enough books historically.
yeah,
I haven't had enough books to um, get a table.
yeah,
And I told them this time, I said, I'll share a table with somebody, that's fine, but I can't do an out of state con
yeah.
and not at least have an opportunity to sell.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I'm sharing with
yeah. So,
I'm sharing with Barbara Evers. So
oh, yes,
yeah,
I
that's
forgot
pretty
who
fun.
I'm sharing with. I'm sharing with somebody, but I can't remember who it is. It's somebody I know, but not somebody I've shared a table with, but I can't remember who it is. I'll have to go
Well,
look.
to be fair, Con Carolinas, I feel like you're going to share a table with someone that you know. I feel like we know pretty much
I
everyone's
mean,
going to be
yes,
there. So
yes.
um,
There are people I've sold with. There are a lot of
right.
people I've sold with
Yeah.
before, but I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever. I don't remember. I don't remember who it is. I can't remember
Yeah.
who it is. But
We're gonna have fun.
right, I
We're gonna
wanted
have
to
fun.
ask you about, particularly about the Jubal County series. So, like, how did you get that? I mean, it's
How
pretty hilarious. The whole
so
idea.
yeah. So I actually started writing stuff in the world of Jubal County without knowing that that's what I was doing.
Mm,
Actually, the very first thing I did was I wrote a story that got published in my college's lit journal, and it was a very much me kind of trying to process. Like, it was very Southern Gothic, no magical elements, just kind of me processing in retrospect, me processing. I grew up on a farm of sorts. Like, we didn't do much farming, but we leased our acreage to a cattle farm until and I loved that. And then when I was, I don't know, early teens, we planted it all in pine trees. It became a pine farm. And I hate pine trees. I don't hate pine trees. I hate pine farms. They're ecological wastelands to a large degree. I just hate them. And so it's basically the fields I frolicked across were now a barren pine plantation of sorts. And I hated it. And so I kind of wrote this piece that was kind of me processing that. And that kind of led to some other stories. And, being from backwoods Alabama, I took some stories from my family and kind of fictionalized them. For example,
as you do,
I have a family member. And this is a true story. I have a family member that's part of a barbecue club that has been in existence for like 100 years, and they serve at 6 times a year on a set, like one Saturday a month in the warmer months. They serve 3 hogs worth of barbecue. And they serve at 7. A guy died, like had a heart attack in line. They set him on one of the picnic tables and still served at 7, because their logic was like, look, I mean, we can't do anything,
There's nothing to be done, man. He's
right?
gone.
So this is kind of the background I'm coming from.
Wow.
And so I was building these interconnected stories about life in this fictionalized version of the county that I'm from. And then I met a guy who, one of the best artists I've ever known. He's a queer, colorblind artist in backwoods Alabama. And he paints these like on the sides of barns. And it's just bizarrely gorgeous. And I love it so much. And I've always thought, like, if anyone in this world is a wizard, it's that guy. And so that kind of thought was percolating in there. And then I used to do, even though I don't really believe in ghosts, I want to believe in ghosts. So when I was in grad school, I used to give ghost tours. And one night on a ghost tour, we were in a cemetery. I found a spell jar. Didn't know what it was. Thought it was like a poor man's headstone, and went home, researched it, realized, oh, that's not a headstone, it's a spell jar. Went back, and I actually have it. It is.
You stole the spell jar.
Well, to be fair, I probably saved some woman from being hexed. Yeah, it's right here. Because apparently, if you open it, it releases. But we opened it because if you put honey in, good things will happen. If you put vinegar in, it's a hex. And sure enough, open it up, and they'd put vinegar in here. But yeah, it's Bertha M. Johnson.
Wow.
Was hexed. So that all kind of coalesced into and the last factor was I was in a punk rock social club that we rented a storage shed as our clubhouse, as you do. And we had this one guy who basically moved in there because there was always free beer, and we had set it up with like an old TV, a VHS player, and like some crappy game consoles. And that guy basically just moved in there. Like, he would go home occasionally to shower. And so I was like, man, I guess you could live in a storage shed if you had to. And all that of one day, I don't remember the specific thing, but like all that was percolating, and it congealed into the shenanigans that are Howard Marsh. So, whoo.
So for those who don't know, Bob and I have sold at the same table before multiple times, I think, or at least near each other or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, and anybody who sells with Bob or near Bob eventually learns his sales pitch.
Yeah.
Which is he writes rural fantasy about a
redneck
wizard with a crippling meth addiction.
Yeah. And I get it. I've had people like I can't remember who it was now, but I ran into that. Like I'd met them at a convention, and then like 2 conventions later, ran into them again. Like, oh hey, you might not remember me. And they said, you sell a series of books about a redneck wizard with a crippling meth addiction. I was like, oh, your table was near mine, wasn't it? It's like, yeah, it was. So oops.
Yes. No, but it's fabulous because it inevitably gets a double take by whoever you're saying it to, because they're like, wait, what? Say that again.
A lot of times it's a bad double take. They're like, oh God, and then they walk away. But to me, a good elevator pitch drives away as many people as it draws in, because I don't want to waste my time pitching to someone who wouldn't be interested, and I don't want to waste their time either. So
yes,
it works.
Yes. And it's also good too, because and I just the idea of having a good pitch like that, because not all of us are good with social cues. So we may not always recognize when somebody isn't interested, but if you've got something like off the wall like that, just the look on their face will tell you.
Yeah.
You don't have to like read into it. It's not nuanced at all.
Oh yeah. No, and that's the thing, is like when I give that, I'll say 60% of people like they like, back away slowly. And then like
that has not been my experience.
It depends on the crowd. It really does. Like the older the crowd skews, typically the more sideways looks I get. But well, I will say, of like the 40% that's left, like 30% they like, oh, okay, all right, tell me more. But then there's like that 10% that's it. I just tell them that, they're like, okay, here's my money. Like,
here, take my money.
you don't have to tell me anything more. And so, and the good thing is, like, a lot of people, this is something that I was really just blind to when I was first getting started. There's a lot of folks that just don't want. They're very introverted. They're very shy. They just don't have the spoons. They don't want to talk to me. They don't want, and they don't want me to talk at them at length. So early on, I would give the pitch and then kind of go into the extended pitch. But these days, like I say one sentence. If they want more, I will give them more. But if they're just like, okay, yeah, cool, they pick up the book, read it, I don't just sit there and talk at them. A lot of folks don't want that. So normally Ben's there, and so I'll just start talking to Ben about something. Give them time to look with no pressure, and then I mean, if someone picks up the book at that point, I mean, it's sold, really. At that point, it's,
or at the very least,
always,
let them read the back. Like if they pick it, you're like halfway there when they've got the book in their hand. You're halfway there. And some people, and honestly, if they pick up the book and start reading the back, and that's something I think you learn about convention sales as you as you sell, is that if they've got it in their hand, don't keep talking, because they want to look at the words. And it's really annoying to be trying to read something when someone's talking to you.
Yes, absolutely. That was actually one thing I did was first part of this year in January, I redid all my books. I redid all the covers, and the main thing I did was I redid the back of the books so that you can't really tell here, but this doesn't look like super big. I get here, but it's much easier to read than what used to be there. And that was part of it. Was I wanted to make sure that, because how I do it is I have one book on a stand facing out, and then laying face down in front of it is the book. So if people don't want to pick up the book, they can still read the back of it, kind of deal.
Oh, that's smart.
And so it works. It works. So sometimes you'll see that, they stop and they're reading the back of it, and then a lot of times then they will pick it up and they'll flip through and things like that. If they pick up the book and they have money, the sale is pretty well. I would say 70% of the time they will buy it. If I can just get them to pick it up. I don't know if they think it's like a baby bird that it can't go back to its mother if you've touched it or what, but maybe I should start telling people that it's like a baby bird. You've touched it. It can't come back to the nest.
That's right. Yes, it's like peeing on it. It's yours now.
Right. Gosh,
but please
some of the folks I've met at con would probably just be on it.
Met some doozies.
Met some doozies. It's fun though.
So, no. Sean's in the house. Hello, Sean. And earlier, Rosie was talking about when you were talking about the barbecue. Instead of prop me up beside the jukebox, prop me up beside the barbecue.
Yes, absolutely. And look, I'm just gonna say it. When I die, I want a hog cooking. I mean, not me, obviously, but I want y'all to. So it's kind of a tradition in my family, like my branch, not as much, but like my uncle's side, it's very much this. You cook the hogs in above ground pits for like 24 hours, and typically how it works was the older men start the process, and they do the first, like basically till it gets dark. And then the young men stay up with it all night. And then it's typically from that point, when it comes off, the women pull the meat typically. That's kind of the old school West Alabama. Everyone's got to know their place kind of thing. So but I did that when I got married the first time. We had a hog cooking, and we did not divide it up by gender, but we did divide it up by age. We still did that. The older folks kind of got it going, and then we stayed up all night telling stories, and over the course of this night, I had like 6 of my friends all start a story like, I don't believe in the supernatural, but let me tell you about this absolutely supernatural event that happened to me over and over and over. Anywho, so I would love that. Like when I die, y'all cook a hog and stay up all night with the hog and tell stories about what led to me getting stabbed by a hitchhiker. So, because that's probably how I'm going to die. Let's
or eaten by an alligator. Or it's something.
I pick up a lot of hitchhikers, so it's not.
Wow!
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, wow. So Sean is drooling at your description of the food, and he has agreed that we will organize said pig cooking thing. I'll tell the stories of your bad dates I've heard a few times over.
Yes. I've got some doozies.
All the stories, man. All the stories. So speaking of, we have your covers on the wall here. I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction. And my screen, it's the right direction. Okay, good. So tell me about these covers. They are just so visually stunning to me because they're so different.
Thank you.
So tell me.
So the first one, book 1, which is the deer skull you see there, I hired a woman on Fiverr to make. And this is back before every person you hired on Fiverr was using AI to do covers. So I reached out to her, and I have always, not always, but for the time I started thinking about what I wanted my cover to look like, it was essentially this. I had a clear vision in mind of how I wanted the cover for book 1 to look. And so I found a woman on Fiverr who, looking through her portfolio, she had done some more minimalist covers. And I really like a good minimalist cover. And so she did a fantastic job, like 10 of 10, no notes. And then I hired her for the second cover, and I did not like it. It is it's the depth of the water. The second cover you see there, that is like 70% her cover. But it was COVID, and I was just sitting at home, and I was like, if I'm not going to ever teach myself how to do, like, if I don't teach myself to do graphic design now, I will never have the time again to do it. So I learned just enough graphic design that I don't always have to hire someone for this kind of stuff. And I paid her extra for the source files. I always do that. Anytime I hire someone, I will pay however much extra it is to get the source file, because I am that kind of person that I will fiddle with it at some point in the future, and I don't want to have to track this person down and say, hey, could you fiddle with this to some degree? So with my wife's help, I was able, like, colors. She's like, I'm not good with colors. I can do the layout. So typically what it does, I'll lay it out, and then she'll come around and kind of correct me on like how the colors go, and she'll have like a bunch of little tweaks and stuff like that. And so I've made all the covers since then. And when I went back, like I said, the core art stayed the same on all the covers when I redid them back in January, but I totally redid the backs of them. I totally redid the spine. Stuart Jaffe once told me, we were at the Atlanta Self-Publishing Convention. It's where I met him, and he just happened to come by my booth while we were, like, neither one of us was speaking at that time. He's like, your name needs to be bigger on your cover. I was like, okay. And I just filed that away. And so there's like, oh, I'm redoing all my covers, making the name bigger. So
yes,
bunch of tweaks like that. And then since then, I'd bought Atticus since then, so I redid all the interiors, and I kind of normalized my back matter, and I reached out and got some blurbs from some authors. So it was a whole thing. But yeah, so that's my covers. I weirdly got put, because I don't view myself as a cover guy, because like everything I do tends to be like the contrarian advice, like, because I write urban fantasy, and these really read more as horror than urban fantasy.
I would agree.
And so, but what I will say is, one, I did start as a horror author, and while these books are not horror, there are definitely horror
Terrific
scenes throughout. But for me, what works is typically when I'm promoting these, like if I'm on like the urban fantasy subreddit or in like fans of urban fantasy Facebook group or stuff like that, my covers stand out because they don't fit the norm. And yes, absolutely, some people will not give them the time of day because of that, but I do know that they do kind of stand out. I'm not saying it's a good standout. I'm just saying that they stand out, and it's worked for me. So
yes, and that's what matters too. That's what matters.
Not to say it wouldn't work better if I had a more traditional cover. maybe I would be, the next James Butcher, Jim Butcher, whoever at this point, but somehow I doubt it. And I don't know, they make me happy. So at the end of the day, the only person I got to keep happy is me and my wife. So
that's right. That's right. And Sean Sean says, when are we going to use an empty bottle and a gun as a title? But he also makes the point that you're more rural fantasy than urban fantasy. And that's true.
Yeah,
that's a distinction. So yours should be different because they're not urban. They are rural.
Yeah. If I wish that was more established as a genre. Because like there's absolutely been rural fantasy books. Like I was not the first one to write this. Mythago Wood.
Sookie Stackhouse. Yeah, the whole Sookie Stackhouse, True Blood.
Yes,
that is all rural fantasy. Yes.
Yeah. So there's absolutely, some big names.
It's usually shuffled under contemporary fantasy, under the contemporary fantasy umbrella.
Yeah, like Mythago Wood, I would argue. I can't remember the guy who wrote that's name, but like that's absolutely rural fantasy, but yeah, it gets it goes under contemporary fantasy, or a lot of it gets
Mhm.
put under magical realism,
Yeah,
because it
which
folk like because of the folk magic. A lot of
yeah,
times folk
it's
magic
weird to
gets
me
lodged
though.
under there.
I always associate magical realism with
Yes.
literary, not genre. So whenever somebody says I write magical realism, I automatically assume that they write literary because that
Yeah.
has always been a literary subgenre,
Yeah.
not a genre, like not a commercial fiction
Yeah.
subgenre.
No,
We've always
absolutely.
been types of fantasy or whatever. I agree, Sean. I
Yeah.
think, and the thing is, again, just like paranormal romance. Paranormal romance was around way before we had a name for it. Yes, I agree, Rosie.
Yeah.
But paranormal romance, I mean, Chelsea Quinn Yarborough, she was already writing paranormal romance in historical settings back in the 70s.
Yeah.
So, it's been around, it just didn't have a name. And it's the same, I think, with
Yeah.
rural fantasy, is that it's been around. It just hasn't broken out with its own genre name yet. But I
Yeah.
feel like we're getting close to that. And yes, I agree, Joe, romantasy as well. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
And that's the thing, like lit RPG, progression fantasy, 10
yeah,
years ago, those were not established genres, and now they're very established. And
yeah.
I think the real hurdle right now is, there's just not a lot of people writing urban fantasy now, not like there was, um, because a lot of the authors have shifted over to paranormal romance, and I know
Yeah.
a number of authors that have basically they gave up on writing urban fantasy because paranormal romance had kind of consumed the space.
Well,
Like,
I because a lot of paranormal romance readers associate urban fantasy with paranormal romance, and they're expecting romance in it.
yeah,
And it's urban fantasy. It's not romance. It's
yeah,
not even a subgenre of romance. It is, and I actually, there's a service that does big group promotions
yeah,
that I had signed up for one. It's called, I don't remember what it's called, and this was years ago. But I had signed up for one, and it was urban fantasy and paranormal romance. And I got dinged on some reviews because there was no romance in my
yeah,
urban fantasy. So I emailed them and I said, you guys need to separate these out
yeah.
because they are not
Oh
the
yeah,
same genre at all. You
yeah.
know,
So,
they're just not.
funny story. Years ago, years ago, a few years ago, an author named Chris Ronan reached out to me and asked me a bunch of questions because, like I said, there's not a ton of guys kind of coming into writing urban fantasy now, like there was, I feel like 10 or 20 years ago. The
Mhm,
perception is that urban fantasy it's kind of everything's cyclical, and urban fantasy is in a
mhm.
down swoop currently. So, um, and I feel like a lot of the guys who would have probably tried to write urban fantasy are shifting. They're following the dollars to a degree. Like the folks who are writing it are the folks like, well, I couldn't write anything else. But a lot of these folks, they could write multiple things. They're not writing urban fantasy because of the perception that paranormal romance is eating that slice of the pie.
Mm.
And so, um, he reached out to me, asked me some questions. Uh, and then, like a few months later, he said, "Hey, my editor is organizing a newsletter swap for Christmas. We're doing a 12 days of Christmas. Do you want in?" All right. Like a week before that, I had opened the 20 books to 50K Facebook group. I had joined it like years before, never went into it.
Mhm.
I went into it for the first time ever. The very first post was Heather G. Harris saying, "I've been doing this for a year and I made $1.3 million." And I closed the group and have never been back. Uh, so, cut pan, I joined this 12 days of Christmas newsletter swap, which ended up being 24 days of Christmas, and Heather G. Harris was in there. And I ended up getting like
Yeah.
350 newsletter signups off of this one
Mhm.
swap. But me and Chris write kind of male-fronted, kind of gritty urban fantasy, kind of more in the vein of like Sandman Slim or Dresden to a degree. And the other
or Anita
20,
Blake, but
yeah,
men.
yeah, and
Yeah,
like some of the more mainstream, darker side of urban fantasy stuff.
Which is what urban fantasy is.
Right. Well, the other 22 people in this were, if they were writing urban fantasy, it was urban fantasy that did have romance, or it was just paranormal romance. And
Right.
so when I sent out my first newsletter after doing that builder, I immediately had like 50, 60 people just unsubscribe from my newsletter.
Although that's pretty normal in a lot of swaps, I think. You end up, because they just sign up to get whatever, right? Romance eats a lot of the pies.
It does.
Yeah, I think, and I mean,
and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
It's fine. It's just that I think that there's more. Oh, my jaw drops every time I scroll through 20 books. Yeah, but just keep in mind there are a lot of people scrolling in that group also. So like, anyway, but I wanted to say that even though I think that the perception is that paranormal romance is like, it is more popular because romance is more popular, period. But like my experience at cons and different shows that I'm at is probably 30% of the people who 30% of the people who I pitch to and who seem interested in the book will ask me if there's romance in it, and I'll say no, and a very large percentage of them are like, oh, good.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, there is like the urban fantasy market is still there, and they still want what they want. And they're having trouble finding it because fewer people are writing in it, right?
Yeah, and everything's cyclical. I think the big problem right now is there just needs to be a clearer delineation from the booksellers, like Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Books A Million. They just need to do a better job of separating those.
They need to put urban fantasy with fantasy and paranormal romance with romance. It's literally right in the names.
Yeah, I'm no expert. Do whatever, but they need to do something, and they will eventually get that straightened out. And once that's straightened out, I think urban fantasy, like I said, horror routinely goes through boom and bust cycles.
Yeah, I mean, vampires have been unpopular for years now. Never mind that Sinners just came out and is like the second largest grossing horror movie ever.
Did we talk about? Have I talked with you about it? I know Sean was there for it. There was a panel that Sean moderated at JordanCon on the sci-fi track. We had someone in the crowd who said, "Have y'all looked at the theory about whichever U.S. political party is the dominant party determines if zombies or vampires are more popular?"
Really? So Republicans are zombies, I'm guessing.
No, it's I think it's when Democrats are in power, zombies are more popular because it's the fear of zombies. But then when Republicans are in power, it's the fear of the
vampires, because they suck everything out of everything.
I may have that backwards. I don't know.
Okay.
But
because that's fascinating.
Well, it held absolutely true. You can look it up. It was like every president since Reagan. It tracked to up until Trump. Trump broke the cycle. So as he breaks all the things. So So weird little things. So, like everything's cyclical. It'll come back around, and I'll be there waiting.
Yes, we'll have all the books. So there it is, Joe. It's correct that zombies equal Dems and vampires equal Republicans. He was on the panel. Should have been on that fucking panel.
It was zombies in space panel. That's
gotcha.
what we were talking about. So
gotcha. Yeah, I'm not a big zombie person. So zombies are the only movies, like horror movies, that I can't watch. I can't watch zombie movies.
Okay. I've spent most of my life intensely phobic of zombies. I watched the original black and white Night of the Living Dead when I was like 5 years old, like way too young. And it takes place in Butler County, Pennsylvania. And I grew up for part of my youth in Butler County, Alabama. And so I ignored the state,
Oh.
and I thought that it was not a movie, as a documentary, as a kid.
Oh.
And so I actually got to college and was like, this is so dumb. This is the dumbest fear. Zombies are not real. Why are you so afraid of zombies? And a new zombie movie was coming out. And so I was like, I'm going to go see it. I was a freshman in college. I didn't like my dorm roommate. And so I spent as little time in there as possible. So I'm going to go to the movie by myself. The hell with it. And I caught the last showing, and it was the Dawn of the Dead, the movie that introduced fast running zombies.
Oh my God.
I was so terrified that like I sat all the way through the trailers, just like locked in my seat. And I'll never forget because it had I can't remember now. Richard Cheese. He does like lounge versions of popular songs, and he did a lounge version of Down with the Sickness. And that was like what played over the credits. And eventually, like the two people that worked there like came in and was like, you have got to go. We have got to sweep this place so we can go home. I went outside. I was the only car in the parking lot except for the employees.
Oh my God.
I got in my car and drove and like major highway, right? Now it was kind of late, and major highway for Alabama is a low bar, but I drove for probably 3 miles before I saw, and it wasn't until I got to the first Waffle House in town that I saw another living human being. I was like, it happened. It happened while I was in the theater. Like the zombie outbreak fucking happened. So yeah, I'm over it now though, but it took some doing.
Yeah, I am not. And my thing is like I can read about zombies, that's not a problem. And I can watch zombie comedy. That's not a problem either. But like they freak me out. They just freak me out. And it's not even the zombies themselves. And the point where I've told this story before, but the point where I was just like done with it is I decided I was going to watch The Walking Dead because I had a friend who was a recurring zombie in it. I was like, cool, let me support Tony. And so I'm watching it. I got to like the third. Yes, Zomboat. I loved Zomboat. Sorry. That was hilarious. But I got to like the third episode or whatever, and it's the one where they're in downtown Atlanta and they're up on top of one of the big tall buildings, and they're looking down. There's zombies everywhere, and that was fine. And there's an armored vehicle down there, and they're like they have to get to the armored vehicle for whatever reason, I don't remember. So they go downstairs inside the building, and two of them decide they're going to go, and they cover themselves with entrails so that they smell dead, which was also fine. Like that, I was with it. And they go out there, and I guess I have this habit of putting myself into the character.
Yeah.
And I could not handle the stress of them walking among the zombies. I kept pausing, and I would pause it, and I would have to like walk away for 5 minutes because I was getting all freaked out. And then after like the third time, I was like, this is supposed to be fun. What are you doing? Just turn it off.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And funny you say about the funny zombie movies. That, in retrospect, that's really what kind of got me over it. Shaun of the Dead,
Shaun of the Dead,
stuff like that.
Yes.
Like
if you ever watch Zomboat, you should watch Zomboat.
Okay, I'm
it's
all
set
in
Birmingham. And they're escaping the zombies on a little river barge.
Oh my God,
so they'll be running, and they'll get to the river barge, and then it'd be like toom, 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 toom. It is great. I want to say it was on Netflix. I don't remember, or maybe Prime. It is so good.
I am absolutely going to find this.
It is hilarious.
When you say Birmingham, Alabama, or Birmingham, England?
No, England.
Okay.
You guys, there are not canals in Birmingham, Alabama.
We got a river. You never know. Okay. Okay.
I'm shocked Bob hasn't seen it. It's right up with his favorite movie of all time. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Okay. Not only is it my favorite movie of all time, it is the best movie of all time, I will accept no other answers, and it is Lake Placid.
Oh, I haven't watched it.
Oh, it's an absolute delight. It's got everything you want. It's got drama. It's got romance. It's got a 30-foot crocodile and or alligator. It's got Oliver Platt. It's got Betty White is the first time she cussed. So it's got that guy.
It's probably not the first time she cussed, but maybe the first time she cussed
on camera.
On camera.
It's got the guy who I always think is Bill Pullman, but it's not, starring opposite the person I always think it's Helen Hunt, but is not. It's got a cameo from a young Mariska Hargitay, pre Law and Order SVU. What more could you want out of a movie? Nothing.
I mean, that does feel pretty cool.
Yeah.
Does feel pretty cool.
Yep.
Oh, Nikki's here. Hi, Nikki.
Hey.
Seen you in hot minutes. Although I'll see you in October.
Yeah. Thank you. She gets it. She gets it. Yeah.
Yes.
Lake Placid. It's amazing.
Well, I will put it on my to be watched list. How about that? Just on your recommendation.
There we go. And I mean, Joe, I'm pretty sure I've heard Joe say at least 4 or 5 times that it is the best movie that was ever made. And he's a film guy, so
of course that
would know.
I mean, then yes, he would know. He would know. Okay, before we get all off on other things, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that you do every month. That is a really big thing, I think, for an indie to do. And you have your monthly financial roundup, basically.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that for folks who don't know what that is, and tell us how you started doing that?
Yeah. So I call it, this was not the original name. The original name of this project was called 365 to 1K. Because my goal was in 1 year, I would get to where I was making $1,000 a month hustling, doing the side hustles. To be fair, or to be clear, at the point where I started this, I was doing a fair bit of freelance writing through Fiverr at that time. And for those who don't know me, I do a bunch of things. So at this time, another one of my COVID projects was print on demand shirts, like designing shirts and uploading them to like Amazon and TeePublic and Redbubble and such like that just do print on demand shirts. So needless to say, I did not hit my goal. But over time, it is morphed into what I call my transparency project. And the reason it's become that is when I was getting started, I had no point of reference. I didn't know any other authors. I had no one I could I could, but I'm not the kind of person that's going to message some author I respect and say, "Hey, how much money did you make doing this last month?" In fact, I don't ask anybody that. If people tell me, now I will say, if I'm at a convention, I will absolutely walk up and say, "Oh, how's it going?" and hope that you tell me how much money you made, because I'm really curious. I don't go tell everyone like, "Oh my God, can you believe Venessa sold $3,000 worth of stuff?"
I wish.
Yeah, right. I'll be like, Vanessa's doing pretty good. But I'm never going to share specific numbers unless you give me permission to. But anywho, so I do that. I do every month. I do my monthly recap where I'm always trying to evolve it. So initially it was just very loosely, like, what are some things I tried this month? What kind of worked? What kind of didn't? I would explain if, like, I got off Twitter. So when I got off Twitter, I was explaining, like, hey, I'm off Twitter. I will no longer be tracking that statistic because not only do I just track my sales, I track my social media. So you'll see all the different platforms I'm on, how they grow, how they shrink, which ones I'm adding, which ones I take off. But I also do, outside of that, I do convention recaps. Every convention I do, I absolutely do a post where I talk about how much it cost me to be there, how much I made, what I tried differently that event. If I did panels, I talk about the panels I was on. I have a section on there called WTF, where if I had some just bizarre interaction with someone coming by the booth, I will, no identifying information, but I will I will drop a little snippet on that just so you can see kind of what it's like to be in the booth. But I also do like book launch data. So every time I launch a book, I track the what I call my launch window, which is a 5-day period there where I track all the sales numbers. I do, and then I get very transparent with kind of my direction. Like I'll be very transparent about like if my depression has really gummed up projects I was working on, or like earlier how I was talking about JordanCon. I did a big long post recently where I talked about how conversations with Ben and how doing Huntsville over JordanCon, all this is kind of informed my decision making on how I'm kind of mapping out my future as an author. Like, kind of, I've come to the realization that I like being married, and if I do 30 or 40 events a year, I will not continue to be married. So, 10 to 11 out of town events is about the most I can reasonably do, like one a month, like one weekend away a month. But also like beyond my wife just wanting me around, like I like being around my wife too. So it's like I don't want to be on the road every weekend.
Right.
And so if I've never had an event where I've sold $2,000 worth of stuff. The most I've ever done was 1,800, and that was at Dragon Con. But I feel like over the course of my, over the next five years or so, I think I could get to a point where I'll have enough books on the table that I could consistently get to around $2,000 an event. But that times 10 events is only 20 grand.
Yeah.
I have lived.
Quit your job.
I have lived on 20 grand, but I was
you don't want to.
I was 23 and didn't have health insurance.
And it was like 20 years ago.
Yeah. I have been not trying to go back to that. So kind of having all this realization kind of, and I talk through that, like kind of talk through what's led to this decision making and how I'm going to be choosing. Like I'm now going to prioritize events where I've always kind of prioritized events where I get to do panels because I just like doing panels. But I've kind of come to the realization that in-person vendor cons are not going to get me to where I want to be. I loved when we've done Atlanta. We did it last year together. I couldn't do it this year, but last year that was amazing. But that's a vendor con. We don't get to do panels there, And
well, actually, this year, I mean, they've asked, they've said that we can do panels if we want.
They actually they emailed me. Apparently, George Weinstein, who's the president of the Georgia Writers Club, I don't know how, but some guy at Atlanta Comic-Con encountered him, and he was like, "Oh, here's a list of names of people that I know do panels at conventions. You should ask them." And I got an email from him. I was like, "Well, I'm not going to be there this year, but keep me in mind for next year." But yeah, and it's just a different kind of crowd,
Yeah. So, for sure.
I do like money, but in my mind, I'm going to be trading some short-term dollars for hopefully more
long-term dollars. Yes.
But I'm also unlucky, so we'll see how it goes.
But that's a big thing, right? We have to think the long game. And Nikki asked where to find this data. It's on his website, which we should have linked below. He posts every month. And if you're in TWT, if you're in TWT, which Nikki is a member, but so check TWT, and he posts in there when he puts it up on the website.
I don't do all the posts in there. I only do the monthly one there because I'm not trying to
right.
Feed. So I do the monthly one, but like I will, whenever I do a post, I post it, it's on the blog on my website, but I'll share links on Facebook and stuff like that. And I will say,
super appreciates them.
Yeah. I will say that I have part of me doing this was I wanted more people to take part in this. I did it's kind of twofold. I go as in depth as I do because, frankly, it draws people to my website.
Yeah.
I have gotten sales. I get a surprising number of sales of people that are like, I don't read your genre, but I appreciate, like, they follow me home
And they
from
support you.
from the
Yeah.
self-publishing subreddit. And so they'll see me on there. They appreciate some posts I've done there. They come check it out. They see all the transparency stuff and they say, hey, I just bought, your first book as a thank you for doing this.
Mhm.
So I would do this even if that wasn't the case. I just would not spend as much time on this as I do. Like I get pretty in depth. If
Mhm.
if it wasn't for people coming by, I would just drop it. You know, I
Yeah.
made $40 this month, and that would be the blog post. Um,
Yeah.
but like I said, I get pretty granular with it. But I will say that a few authors have kind of R.M. Hamrick, who
Mhm.
you should she was author at Multiverse.
Mhm. Yeah.
On her Patreon, she does the same thing, and I've actually I liked her so much. She's got a feature that she does on there that I was like, I can't believe I haven't been doing this. Like hers is better than mine. So she breaks down a list of like, here are the things that I did this
Yeah.
month, and like
That's what's
I would
super useful.
yeah, I would kind of talk in general terms of like, oh, hey, I kind of, I did, a lot of my sales, a lot of my book sales money in that category came from I did conjuration this month,
Right.
but I never really broke down the stuff going on behind the scenes. And so
Mhm.
I now keep a run. Every time I do something, I add it to the list. And so now when I do my recap, I've started a section where here are the random things I did, be it I emailed a professor to see if I could come speak to their class, or this month, uh, spoiler, it's all website all the time. My life has been consumed
Mhm.
on I have to totally rebuild my website before June 2nd,
Yeah.
or I have to give GoDaddy more money. And I will go
Ooh.
lay in the road before I give GoDaddy more money. So the worst part is I'm having to move my blog over one blog post at a time, and
Oh,
it's
no.
hundreds of blog posts.
Can you not export them all?
I all my blog was built in GoDaddy's internal website builder, and it has an import feature, but it does not have an export feature. Trust me,
And have you tried
trust
to,
me.
like,
I have
email their customer service and ask them to export it for you?
uh,
I mean,
GoDaddy is not going to do anything to help lose a customer. But no, I have messaged. Oh no, trust me, I have talked to their support at length multiple times, and there's just nothing to be done. Anyway, look, before I was doing this, I was just moving blog posts, and I just got to 2024, so all I have to do is all of last year and all of this year. But I'll be honest, a lot of the posts are not making the transfer over. A
yeah.
lot of the posts were like, I used to do a good number of book reviews. I'm not doing
Mhm.
those anymore because I feel like it's one thing to do a book review when you are absolutely a nobody.
Yeah.
And while I'm still 90% a nobody, I I feel like leaving like an in-depth book review on my blog, like as a special thing, is I don't know. I just don't know that that's
And it's also not where you wanna put your energy right now, and that's
well, and
valid.
that's the thing. It's stuff that I don't do it
Mhm.
anymore. I haven't done it in a couple of
Yeah.
years. So some posts you're just not making the transfer over. Some
Mhm.
posts, the thing is, like, I'm not. A lot of these posts had a bunch of pictures in them. I'm not moving those pictures over. So, like, if this post really required a bunch of pictures, it's not getting moved over.
Hi.
But all the transparency stuff is getting moved over. And so it's
Yeah.
still going to be. There'll probably be 200 plus blog posts on this blog when it is all said and
Wow.
done. But just some of this stuff is just it was stuff I tried for a little while, got no engagement. No one
Mhm.
cared.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this does or it's stuff that um there's some of these blog posts are like, I don't want this to be a blog post. I want this to be a static page on my site
Yes.
where like for example, we were talking about rural fantasy earlier. Um I want a page where I just talk about rural fantasy. on there, and like with
And
some
that makes
recommendations
sense.
and stuff like that. So that I want that as a page like under my resources section, not
Mhm.
a blog post. So there's some stuff like that going as well. But
Nice.
yeah, so that's my way too long explanation of my transparency project.
No, I think that's great though. And Nikki says, I never make any money at writer focused cons, but I do make profits at reader focused cons. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of, I think that's kind
I'd
of
agree.
normal. You know, you definitely make less at writer focus unless you have books for writers.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Most of the writing speaking engagements that I do, like if I'm one of like I sometimes speak at like the Alabama Writing Workshop and the Atlanta Writing Workshop and stuff like that. Uh, I am typically the only person who even brings books.
Yeah.
Most of the other folks don't even bring books, and it's like, okay, well, I may only make $100 off book sales, but that with my appearance fee made this a lot better of an event.
Yeah.
That paid for
Yeah.
lunch and gas, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna try.
Exactly.
So I'm glad y'all
Exactly.
don't need that money, but your boy does.
That's right. That's right. So so let's talk a little bit. We're gonna wrap up here in a few minutes, but I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about your transparency project, you have a new show here on the Go Indie Now Network, right?
I do, and it's cursed. It is absolutely cursed, but it's amazing. It's great.
Mm.
Well, I say it's amazing. I mean, it's me on there, so the bar can only be
Which
so
is gonna
high.
make it
But
amazing.
but
So,
it's called Page Numbers, and it is basically my transparency project, but me interviewing other authors. So the first episode is live, and I got one of my co-hosts from another podcast I do to interview me because I didn't think it was fair. Like, I'm not going to ask people a bunch of questions about how much money have you made in your career
mhm.
without having disclosed that first. And yes, I realize that
Yeah.
people could just go to my website, but I want it to all be fair. So the first episode is me, and then I've got multiple episodes recorded with other people, and something has gone dramatically wrong with every recording so far.
Oh no.
But
I mean, that's
that's
the
me.
nature of the beast,
That's
though.
me. That's my
But
luck.
it's but it's also the nature of the beast,
It is.
honestly. It
It
really
is.
is. It really is.
I work in IT, and the IT gods
So you know.
well, they hate me. So this is why I don't. I work on the technical writer side and project management side of IT, not the sysadmin networking programming side of IT.
And I'm sure your company is very grateful for that.
Yeah, I like
They
to think
just don't
so.
know it.
Yeah, yeah.
They just
So
don't
yeah,
know it.
so yeah, that's page numbers, and it's not always going to be authors. Um,
Mhm.
it will be podcasters, artists, and that. It'll be primarily be
Mhm.
authors, just because that's
Creatives.
yeah.
Yeah.
Authors, I just speak that language a little more clearly, shall we say? So I have a little more insight on what questions to ask if we
Mhm.
dive deep into a particular topic. But I want it to be valuable to everyone, and I just want people. I feel like a lot of folks get into the creative arts thinking they're going to make money, and then they have an idea of how much money is realistic, and that number is never actually realistic, and then they get
Mhm.
discouraged and then they quit. And so
Yeah.
I would like more people to have a realistic idea of
Mhm.
what they could actually make, so they can moderate their expectations, so then they won't get so depressed about well, I didn't I'm not Stephen King, I quit. No, I want everyone to stay around and keep being
Yeah.
creative, and just understand, if you want to make a lot of money, you're gonna have to work really hard, be lucky, and
Yeah.
keep at it for a long time. Um,
Yeah. And I think it's really important what you're doing, and I appreciate that you're doing it because I agree with you. People as just readers, people who read all the time have no real concept of the business of writing. So oftentimes readers will be like, "Oh, I would like to write." And that's great. Like, come, write. Be part
please,
of our group, right?
yeah,
But but because nobody talks about the numbers very much in the indie world particularly, um that because like in the trad world, that's a whole different beast, right? It's
yeah,
entirely different. In the indie world, we don't really talk about numbers much, so that
no,
transparency is really important so that people understand it's a slog, man.
Yeah.
It is not, you write your book, you put it out and it sells. That
Yeah.
is not how this works at all.
The crazy thing is that if you actually get to conventions, people will be very transparent with you. I find.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Now, I'm not saying you can just walk up to a booth and ask an author, but if you are an author or creative, like I like at Con
Yeah,
Carolinas, I'll walk around and talk to a ton of folks. Oh, how'd your weekend go? And I'll tell them like straight up, like, I'm at 700 for the weekend or
yeah,
whatnot. And part of it is like I am always trying to get a feel for what someone considers a good weekend. I
mhm,
don't need them to be super transparent and tell me I've made $50,000 doing this. I need to know if they consider selling 5 books at an event a good event. Because if
yeah,
that's a good event for you, I am more than happy for you. But I need to know that so that when you
mhm,
recommend me, if I ask you, hey, I see that you do
yeah,
um, Monsterama. uh, is that a good event for you? And you tell me it's a good event. Well, if I know a good event for you is 100 books or 5 books, that informs my
yes,
decision making. So I'm
yes.
always trying to get a little bit of
It's
a read on
defining your
folks.
terms. You're
Yeah,
getting a definition of their terms. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think that's really important.
a lot of what you'll find is a lot of folks will not talk dollars, but they will talk numbers of books sold.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like if I talk to uh, someone like James Maxey or Milton Davis, they like to talk number of books, um,
Mhm.
and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It still gives me that kind of ballpark. I like to do by numbers, just because I have books at different price points. So that's
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
the main thing.
And and for me, because I still have fewer books, I sell other things as well. And
Yeah,
those other things will often be the difference between whether I've lost money on an event or
yeah.
made money on an event,
Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
So,
That
yeah.
was one of the earliest bits of
Mhm.
advice I got given, and it was from an artist. Um, Excuse me, and she she was a little bit of a mentor of mine, and she's great. Heather Parrish. If you go to my website, you may see something. I'm just going to give a quick shout out. She's currently battling cancer.
Mhm.
She's an amazing human being. She's done so much to support arts in the Montgomery area. If you search Heather Parrish, Parrish, GoFundMe, you'll see it. Anywho, she gave me some advice early on where she said you got to have a cheap something on the table. And to
Mhm.
that point, all I'd ever had was basically my books. And the point she made is like, someone may want to support, but they don't want a $15 or $20 support. They like what you're doing, but they don't have the
Mhm.
money. And it's like, if you have $1, $2, $3, $5, something on the table, you'll get money that you wouldn't have
Mhm.
gotten otherwise. And I did that for a long time, and it really adds up. It really does. And you're
Mhm.
right.
It really does.
It can absolutely make an event go from ugh to okay, this was a good event. So
Yeah. The very first time I ever actually made a profit at Jordan Con was because of that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I've gotten away from it a little bit because I was doing stickers, and
Mhm.
I share space so much that my sticker setup took up so
It's
much
too
space
big.
that I wasn't
Yeah.
able to actually put. So I was carrying these stickers to event after event, and not being able to put them out. But I now have my zine. I do game design. I design these
Mhm.
self-contained role-playing games, and they're $10 each, which is not the super cheap something, but it is cheaper than my books, and
Mhm.
it hits a totally different demographic. And that's the other thing.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
when I did stickers, I did not typically sell $20 in stickers and a
Yeah.
book. I sold a
Yeah.
book to someone. I sold $20 in stickers to someone. There was not overlap there, really. Like
Yeah.
the people who were buying stickers for their water bottle are not typically buying Meth Wizard books. So but they should.
I don't know. I would.
right?
So yeah, and I like that too, because especially if you're at a nerdy con, because most cons we go to are where nerds hang out, and there's almost always a gaming room at whatever cons we're at. So there are definitely gamers there. And it's not uncommon for someone who is a gamer to not really be a recreational reader.
Yeah.
It's, it's not uncommon. It's not that they don't read, because obviously they read gaming stuff,
right?
But that's where they focus their reading. They don't like, it's been my experience. Do you find that also common?
I was so surprised by that. I mean, so surprised by that. Because I am a huge gamer, but I also read a lot of books, and we're all guilty of this. We assign our biases to, and we just all assume that everyone's, like us to some degree. And the people who buy my zines, I would say to date, less than 5% of my sales have been a book and a zine. It's two totally different markets. My books are primarily bought by women in their 30s, I'd say. Probably has bought the most of my books of any demographic, which makes sense. There are more women readers. But those zines is almost exclusively folks, I'd say, under 25, and most, I'd say, probably 70% male. So it's kind of two different demographics.
Entirely different demographics. Yeah.
And I want the money from all the demographics.
Give me all of it. All of it.
When I figure out how to sell books in nursing homes, it's game on.
I mean, we all go get old. Give me 15 more years.
Look, we just need to get the Scholastic Book Fair to tour, an indie Scholastic Book Fair touring through nursing homes.
Yes, let's do it.
We'll be blotting our tears with crisp $100 bills.
But you also have to have large type, because us old folks, we need big type.
So I didn't do this consciously, but my books do have slightly larger than normal print size. And when I redid enough people had commented on that from my first editions, that when I did my second editions, I kept the font bigger, because people really of all ages like, oh my God, thank you for not using tiny font.
Yeah.
I was just trying to make my book look a little thicker.
But it's true though. Like, fonts across everything have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah. And to be clear, I'm not padding my book hundreds of pages, but it added probably about 10, 15 pages to the end of it by using a 12 font.
But either way, people liked it. People liked it. So
they do.
The gamers, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, we've run late. We were allowed to, but we knew we would, because this is what happens when Bob and I sit down. We just the whole time, little hens. So yes. But thank you so much for being on the show. Tell us where we can find your stuff.
Tales by Bob. If I'm on a social media platform, you can find me there at Tales by Bob. I may not actually be there.
Placeholder.
Yeah. I'm not. Yes, I have a Threads and a Blue Sky, but I never remember to actually log into them. But talesbybob.com and Instagram is really my social media of choice, I guess, because it'll cross post to Facebook and Threads for me. So
I use a scheduler that posts to all the places.
I need to.
So,
God, I keep every month is the month I'm finally going to do that.
And every month you don't. Yay! Thank you, Rosie and Kofu. Thanks everybody for hanging out and joining us. Where's the next place you're going to be in person, Bob?
Con Carolinas.
It's the end of the month. End of the month. Yes. I should probably order more books, because I've got a con before that. So I should probably order more books.
Because we're going to sell out. So
I'm hoping. Fingers crossed.
Yep.
Fingers crossed.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for joining us. As always, everybody, please like and subscribe. Do all the things. And don't forget, Sunday at noon, we have This Week in Indies. Happens every single week. I don't know what the topic is. I don't know if I'm on it or not. Anyway, it'll be here. Whether I'm here or not, we'll see. Thank you to Joe Compton for doing all the stuff behind the scenes. As always, y'all have a wonderful week. And it's always time to go indie now.
Go indie now.
Yes.